Hey guys, welcome back. I wanted to talk about something that doesn't really get talked about in the normal day in the life videos that you see all over YouTube and TikTok, and that's the paperwork side of things that goes along with it for us that run our own service trucks. If you're in a shop, it's not as much. Usually you have a shop manager that will do that, but when you run your own business, you have to do it all yourself. For every hour and a half I spend out in the field doing an oil change, I probably spend another hour and a half, 2 hours doing paperwork. So I figured I'd kind of take you through my system and see, if you guys want to use any of it, you can. And those of you in the comments that were saying that you're thinking of starting your own business, it's just something to keep in mind. Go for it, start your own business, go off on your own with your own service truck. But just keep this in mind, that it doesn't end when the wrenches stop turning. You get home, shut off your truck, you're going in the office, into your home office for another couple of hours and sending out invoices and those kind of things. I try to budget every Monday for me to do paperwork so I can spend the rest of the week out in the field and spend Mondays trying to schedule what days I'm going where as best I can. However, that doesn't always work out that way, but it is what it is. Sometimes I do paperwork in the middle of the week if I have to go out in the field on a Monday. So when I send out invoices, if I send out multiple to a recurring customer, I will staple the invoices all together month to month, and then I'll also make a spreadsheet that adds it all up for them. So it gives them the price of each invoice, and then it gives them a grand total. Because me, as a businessman personally, I like to know rock bottom, what's the final check amount. I don't, necessarily need to know all the extra fluff that goes along with it. I like to know rock bottom, what's the check being written for at the end of the day. So I try to break that down as best I can. When I send out work orders or estimates, I do something similar, but what I do is I do the total for each estimate, the grand total if they want to write a check for the entire lump sum, our deposit, which covers my parts and or travel time, and then the balance due upon completion. And it breaks down each estimate for the balance due for them as well over here, so that if they only want to do 2 or 3 of them, instead of, in this case, all 5, they can be like, okay, this is what I will have to write the check for, and they can just put it in their calculator real quick. One thing I do notice a lot is a lot of my, especially the smaller machines, a lot of my agricultural customers use a lot less quantity of oil than a semi truck or something would. A lot of like the Kubota little BX series are 3 1/3 quarts. So I buy my stuff by the quart, and I actually did some research. I use Napa for all my parts as much as I can for like my oil and coolant and stuff. But I did some research, and I actually found that if you buy it by the quart, for the amount you would need for a semi truck, if you buy it by the quart, it actually works out to be a little bit cheaper than buying it with 11 individual gallons or 2 5-gallon buckets and 1 extra 1 gallon. I try to make it as easy on my customers as possible. I give them the option of either going aftermarket with Napa or going OEM with John Deere, Kubota, those kind of things if they want to. And I'll do either one. They're the ones paying for it. So if they want to pay for the more expensive one, I will do that. Otherwise, I try to get them the best price possible by going with Napa, because I've just always had the best reliability with them. especially with batteries. I've never had an issue returning batteries. I've returned batteries before that I thought were going to be a core and they were going to charge me full price for a battery. Turned out the battery was only a year old and they honored the warranty. So, and I didn't even have an invoice or anything because I was still working at an equipment rental company and that battery was a year and a half old. They found it in the system and it had a 3-year warranty. So far Napa has never steered me wrong. You know, there's been a couple times where it was my fault and I ordered the wrong part number. I was off by 1 digit and the filter was the wrong size, but that was my fault. So Napa, especially for aftermarket, do what you can. I like to give my customers options though. Like here's one, for example, that I did for a customer that needed a fuel pump changed on a Kubota, and the Kubota dealer wanted $200 for the fuel pump. The same, and then I get a lot of my aftermarket heavy duty parts off of either Friday Parts or like Fab Heavy, you know, a couple other places. You know, Friday Parts only wanted to charge me $18 or $20, $27 for the fuel pump versus $276 for Kubota. So I gave them the option. I said, which one do you want to do? And they'll tell me, hey, let's do OEM because I prefer to run OEM stuff through my machine. And I will do that. I had another customer that did that as well with the oil and filters. They wanted to run Kubota filters, Kubota oil. The parts price was twice as much as if I'd gone to Napa, but customer paid it, and that was their choice, not mine. I like to give them options as best I can. Like to be as transparent as possible, while also being as fair as possible. Once a week I will as well. I'll print out all my purchase orders, go get my parts. That's why I like to do Monday as my office day, because I can print out all my purchase orders, load up my truck with all the parts I need for the week, and then just, you know, roll out of bed, make myself a cup of tea, put it in my travel mug and go. Nice cup of hot tea at 5 o'clock in the morning when it's 32 degrees outside or 40 degrees outside is not a bad idea. Also, my shop software gives me the option to print out estimates in progress, work orders in progress, and all completed work orders. This is really crucial because if a customer ever goes, hey, where's this work order or where's that, or when was this completed, I can look at this completed work order sheet and say, hey, the work order was opened on 9/2, for example, September 2nd, and it was invoiced and completed on the 15th. So then I can go into my system, pull that invoice and say, hey, I want the invoice for September 15th, and pull it up, print it out, and send it to them. That saves our bacon quite a bit. These work order in progress ones, I can mark on them and say, hey, completed this day, completed that day, or any notes I needed to add, I can scribble all over it and then go in and put that all in the work order before I send off the invoices. I really like these estimates in progress because what I can do is I can go through it, or my wife can go through it because she does all my marketing, does an awesome job at it. One of us can go through this and go, hey, this invoice is, or this estimate is 2 months old. We haven't heard from them. Reach back out to them. Or, hey, this estimate is 3 weeks old. We're putting our schedule together for the week. She'll follow up with them on a Friday saying, hey, we're filling slots for next week. Do you want us to get scheduled to come out? And usually they'll respond within, the next couple of days. So I just thought you guys would want to know, just give you guys a heads up. There is a lot that goes on behind the scenes. It's not just day in the life of make a cup of coffee, make some breakfast, and go spend 12 hours in the truck. There's a lot more that when you're a owner operator, so to speak, there's a lot more that goes into it, believe it or not, that no one really talks about in these videos that I've watched all the time. All this paperwork, I carry it with me, except for like the estimates in progress, and I carry it in one of these enclosed clipboards that have storage. Comes in handy. You can put, you know, I keep a highlighter and a pen in there, because if customer calls and goes, hey, let's get this scheduled, I can mark on an estimate, you know, schedule ASAP or schedule for Saturday only. That's the other thing too you need to, you know, keep an eye on, is when you send out an estimate. For example, I charge 2 different labor rates. I charge an after hours rate because I do Saturdays by appointment only, so I charge time and a half. During the week, it's a normal labor rate, and then I go one step further and break it down based on size of machine. So if I'm doing a little UTV like a Kubota or a little John Deere Gator, I charge about half of what I would charge for construction equipment, because there's usually not much going on. Especially when it comes to like an oil change. It's, you know, you can be done in like half an hour, swapping a quart and a half of oil, the little inline fuel filter, air filter, and an oil filter. You can be out and back in, you know, 30 minutes. So I tend to send that stuff out in accordance, and my system will actually track all that and say, this customer gets this labor rate, this customer gets this labor rate, because I can put it in there and say, this is a construction customer, this is an agricultural customer, and it will override all that kind of stuff for me when I go to write the estimates. So just something to keep in mind, just something I let you guys know. Nothing that really gets talked about much. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and see you on the next one.